Welcome to Season 2 of Unspoken Truth. This will be a journey of self discovery, healing, and bringing out the best version of ourselves and learning the art of being unapologetic, secure in who we are, and loving ourselves first before we love others, knowing when to choose ourselves and letting go of what doesn't serve us. Join me on this journey of discovering unspoken truths and changing the narrative. This is from a woman who's just like you, a mother, a sister, a daughter, and God's child, and in everything else in between. I am still an individual riding the waves of life. I am Nita Terry T, your host of Unspoken Truth. What triggers you? Do you even know your triggers? Triggers are like little psych explosions that crash through avoidance and bring dissociated, avoided trauma suddenly, unexpectedly back into consciousness. Caroline Spring. This podcast is by a woman for women. Though in some episodes, I urge you to listen with your partners, especially this episode. Make a cup of tea, sit back, and let's unpack trauma that causes triggers that can eventually birth bad traits. Episode 2, Dear You, Learn Your Triggers. So let me start by sharing how I learned my triggers. I'm so pro therapy. At times when I feel as if life has me by the horns, I tend to make sure that my mental well being is accounted for. At the beginning of 2020, before the horrific pandemic, I was attending a couple of sessions with a new therapist who made me aware of my triggers. I was at work when I had my trigger. At that moment, I didn't know any of the triggers, so I just took it as me being upset about what had happened. I had a senior yell at me. He undermined my very existence and my role. Without saying anything in return, I stood up from the meeting room, walked back to my desk, and I just wanted to go home. Instead, I packed up and went straight to therapy. As I was unpacking my day, I found myself tearing down as I was so upset at the events that had taken place at work. How this man had addressed me with no respect. I felt naked, ashamed, and stupid. When I finished sharing, she said to me, Nita, you have triggers and you'll need to deal with them because life is full of those people who never understand that people have traumas they deal with and have to live with. I looked at her confused. What did she mean by that? I had triggers from traumas? So I discovered that male figures trigger me, especially unruly, rude, unrespectful ones. When a man raises his voice, the little girl in me finds herself at the mercy of growing up in an abusive home. I automatically turn into that wounded little girl. In season 1, episode 6, we spoke about how much has your childhood cost you. And these are the sad realities we have to live with. Childhood trauma has a big impact on who we become as adults, and it even affects our working environment and relationships. Triggers are born and we become defensive or we crack when attacked. Many of us have different types of triggers. That's why we have abusive men who do not know why they are angry half the time and what pushes their buttons. We have women that trigger at every rejection they get, and they end up having countless and meaningless relationships because something in them gets triggered. A feeling of not being enough, a feeling of being lost and abandoned. When someone makes you feel so angry and you retaliate by acting out, screaming, shouting, and purely being aggressive. Let us sit for a bit and think of the times we felt like someone was just getting under our skin. All you wanted to do was punch them as hard as you can. Think of those moments. Ask yourself, what was going through your mind at that very moment? Emotional triggers are things we cannot ignore. There is no shame in knowing them because once you do, then it's easy to heal or to live with them, knowing how to react towards anything in your life, be it work, relationships, and friendships. It is critical to know them because people around you, and especially those you love. Here are a few common emotional triggers. If you relate to any, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. You just need to acknowledge and heal. You being afraid of someone rejecting you, you being afraid of someone leaving you being afraid of being helpless over painful situations, you being afraid of someone discounting or ignoring you, You being afraid of someone being unavailable to you. You being afraid of someone giving you a disapproving look. You being afraid of someone blaming or shaming you. You being afraid of someone being judgmental or crucial of you. You being afraid of someone being too busy to make time for you. You being afraid of someone not appearing to be happy to see you. You being afraid of someone coming onto you sexually in a needy way. You being afraid of someone trying to control you. You being afraid of someone being needy or trying to smother you. These emotional triggers then become reactions like you become angry, you become needy, and you become a people pleaser. You shut down and withdraw from people and blaming others for your pain. We all carry pain and traumas, but we should not be ashamed of them. We need to be compassionate to ourselves so that we do not hurt others because of how we feel. When someone says something to you that triggers you, take the time, walk away, and address it when you are ready to address it. Let me share another one of my triggers. These are unspoken truths, and I'm happy that I'm sharing, and I'm hoping that you all find some healing and comfort that you're not alone. Some time ago, I was speaking to a good friend of mine. As we were speaking, he then mentions my weight and how much I had gained. I have no issues with my weight. I am who I am. I love myself. But little did he know what triggers me is that one of my relationships a long time ago, the person I was dating used to shame me, telling me how much he would leave me for someone slimmer if I kept gaining weight and I wouldn't take and I wouldn't take and he wouldn't take me out anyway if I didn't have it under control. He verbally abused me, whether consciously or unconsciously. He made sure of it every time he looked at me with disgust on his face. So now, when a female states my weight, I care less about what they would say to me. But when a male says it, I get triggered. I find myself sitting on that couch at my ex's home just being dragged and ashamed. And I see his face of disgust, so I trigger. Instead of shouting, I take a moment to breathe and remind myself that the person talking to me isn't my ex. And I try to change the topic so that I can deal with my trigger and avoid reacting emotionally to the wrong person who didn't inflict the hurts. So all I'm saying is that when you find yourselves at crossroads and emotionally triggering, take the moment to acknowledge that this is just a trigger and breathe and react better towards everyone around you. I speak to you males. If you have anger issues, address the root cause. Even women, address the root. This is how abuse starts in relationships and how people end up getting hurt because of projected emotions on others. And this is how bad traits like manipulation and narcissistic behaviors start. Nothing just starts. It is a pattern of various events that occurred and healing was neglected. We all have a trigger built into our head, not aware of its existence whatsoever. But a single word can pull the trigger, forcing us to feel numb, allowing the shadows to seep through the cracks in our built-up shell. Kate O'Grady. Learn your triggers, name them to acknowledge, then face them. While you are doing that, you have started the process of healing. When healing begins, do not expect results overnight. It takes some time. At times, you will fall right back to the beginning. And that's not failure, it is just human. Hold on to who you are and be kind to yourselves as best as you can. Heal the wounds not only for yourself, but for those who need you as complete as possible. You were born to be real, not to be perfect, unknown. Follow me on Instagram and subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcast. I am Nita Terry T, your host of Unspoken Truth. Until the next episode, remember, everything in life comes with divine order, divine timing, and divine presence. Dear you, you're going to be just fine. I thank you.
The Unspoken Truth is the catalyst for important and thought-provoking conversations that need to be had. The network tackles social ills, spiritual healing, soul-searching, and mental health awareness. To subscribe, click on the show link to follow our podcast and be part of the Unspoken Truth family. Find us on all social media platforms.